Hey y'all, it's Ash. We are midway through our Twilight videos. It's kind of a bittersweet feeling. Even though New Moon gave us all the feels for Jacob, this one packs in a punch. Vampire versus werewolf. Who will get Bella? Clearly, this video is all about the spoilers, just like my previous Twilight videos, so check them out if you haven't already. If you are proceeding with watching this video, no matter what, you have been forewarned. Eclipse still has us experiencing our views through the thoughts and emotions of Isabella Swan, but this movie in particular has more aggression. Aggression from Victoria wanting Bella dead, the Volturi upset with missing a fight, and we can't miss Edward and Jacob's heated moments. But we also get waves of constant uncertainty for Bella Swan's love interest. She does love both Edward and Jacob, but each in their own way. Don't worry, we still get plenty of kissing moments in this movie compared to New Moon, but with the added touch of wolf tongue? Or even the night of Edward's proposal and Bella is feeling a little frisky. Either way, the scenes get heated up. Anyways, we do still get some time with Charlie, but not as much as the book offers us with his blessed sarcasm. But we get the excitement of graduation for Bella, which is basically a milestone for her since she is super clumsy and literally calls for death from non-human creatures. Which leads us to blood and gore flying everywhere. Just kidding, we do get intense biting, shoving, and limbs or heads being decapitated. I feel this sufficed for my impulse for nearly violent action scenes in this particular movie and story. A small point I wanted to make was the ribbon on the front of the Eclipse book. This was not physically pulled into the movie like the apple or the flower was previously. In its own minor detail, the ribbon is to represent the choices or decision of Bella choosing her path of separation or breaking away from human life. Bella does have the life choice of remaining human and going to college, remaining human and living with Jacob and raising a family. Rather, she is breaking the fate of her human life to become a vampire. In retrospect, is she not breaking her soul? Just a thought. But it is an interesting way of portrayal for this book cover on a deeper level emotionally versus visually. The movie does the book justice by keeping to the three primary locations: Forks, La Push, and Seattle. The movie even included more screen time than we planned for Seattle. Seattle in the book was always a newspaper line or a mention from Charlie to be careful. Granted, we did have a side book called The Brief Second Life of Bree Tanner that was based around the creation of the vampire army in Seattle through Bree's eyes. But the movie brought it to life, whereas Eclipse the book skipped around it. We do get equal parts of La Push and Forks though, since we are spending half the movie with Jacob and the other half of the movie with Edward. I have a very minor nitpick in regards to the way a setting in the movie was played out. When you graduate from high school, your class lines up and sits in alphabetical order. The book clearly defined that action because Bella was forced to speak to Jessica pre-graduation, and afterward she had to search for Edward. Whereas in the movie, Bella and Edward are clearly sitting next to each other. That's definitely not alphabetical. The opening scene is very different from the book. In fact, the book preface was not used at all, basically cut from the script. Instead, we have Riley, army manager, is created on the docks. But we do still get Bella's opening quote of the poem Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Personally, I felt gave a nice switch to the movie startup and preparation for what is to come. A few small details I liked that weren't missed was the letter from Jacob, all crossed out in the dresser drawer, and even the newspaper headlines. Even though they weren't exactly the same phrases, it still gave the impression the book needed to be developed into the movie. We visited Renee in Florida for an extremely brief time. Renee's time in the book was already short, but the movie somehow made it feel even shorter. Even though it felt short, her impact on Bella was rather heavy. She nearly made Bella question her life choices and was just simply perceptive of Bella and Edward's interactions. She is basically insightful, which is exactly how Renee was properly portrayed in this movie. Renee brings to light how their relationship is like magnets. Renee using this example of their relationship as magnets was very deep for her childlike mind. Their actions toward each other are so strong that their interactions become electrically magnified for or towards each other. I mean, Edward even previously expressed as a vampire, his personal magnetic force is attracting the humans to him in every sensory possible. Technically, Bella being a human and Edward being a vampire, does this not make them to be the phrase opposites attract? See how I brought a science discussion and pun into this video? I cracked myself up. As we move through the movie, Bella enforces that she is Switzerland between Jacob and Edward's constant bickering. Jacob, as a whole in this movie, is constantly finding ways to interfere with Bella's relationship. He is set in stone that Bella is meant for him, so his logical idea of this action of expressing his feelings is by either enforcing a kiss or playing a mind game to have her kiss him. Not gonna lie, kind of makes the story intriguing of what will he conspire next. Oh, he decides to show up at her grad party and gives her an adorable wolf trinket bracelet. Naturally, Edward has to step up his game and get her not 1 diamond, but 2 diamonds. Either way, Edward and Jacob basically conspire their own little who does it better kind of game. Towards the end of the movie, we get the Volturi's presence. The Volturi scenes in the open field are practically word for word, with some minor adjustments with who is saying what to Jane's questions or statements. Carlisle and Alice speak less, and Bella or Esme speak more. It seemed more interactive, which was nice. Just less Daddy Carlisle talking was a bit of a shame. We do see the other 2 Volturi silent bodies in the book on the screen, which is Dimitri and Alec. Jane is her usual bitchy self. I mean, she doesn't have to inflict pain, but she enjoys doing it. Edward actually calls out Jane for basically knowing about the army creation and being delayed on purpose. Jane does remind the family that the Volturi don't give second chances. Keep that in mind. Caius will be interested to know that she's still human. Carlisle and Esme both try to stop Felix from killing Bree with no avail. Bella makes it clear that the date has been set for her human to vampire transformation to satisfy the Volturi's accusations. I know I am not the only one who has noticed how slightly different the movie ended in the last movie scene compared to the book. The book had left us with an epilogue chapter from Jacob's perspective, which gave us a small preparation for the next book. This was a brief moment of being from the eyes of Jacob. The book allowed us to get the full understanding of the hurt Jacob was feeling for his loss and coping without Bella. We even get some kind of pity from Leah in a Leah kind of way. Instead, the movie was just Bella expressing her final choice with being with Edward, which is technically her last chapter of the book. In a way, the movie is ending the love triangle with Bella. I personally would have been okay with the added maybe 2 to 3 minutes of some Jacob time, and this is even coming from an Edward fan. I did find it interesting that we get a small taste of a different character perspective in this movie. Twilight as a whole is through the eyes of Bella, but in some ways I felt this movie was a form of preparation for Breaking Dawn. Now why am I saying this? Riley. As I mentioned earlier, we dapple our location in Seattle and we interact with the vampire army. But this movie was developed in a small way through a brief perspective of Riley. This changed the pace of the movie. We see him telling the newborns to be careful. Soon after, we get a one-on-one scene of Riley's interactions with Victoria and their soon-to-be trip to Forks. He is asking the questions and he's wanting the answers. The point of views have changed. Later in the movie, when we are at the freezing mountain, we then physically get a full camera close-up of his face, giving us the personal thoughts and reactions of how he is contemplating on how he should move forward with his choices. As a watcher, we are physically in the seat of another character. I like this added depth to the movie. Now, Victoria. Sadly, it wasn't the same actress from the first 2 movies due to Rochelle being recasted for scheduling conflicts. Bryce was the new Victoria. She wound up taking the pivotal role of the army creation for payback on James' death. Granted, both of these actresses are great at their job. This was a shame in regards to a face appearance on the screen. In some ways, I felt this was just a minor detail. Now, let's take a moment and discuss Jessica. I personally felt that in this movie, they tried to redeem Jessica as a character. She has kind of been harsh in the past, and Jessica's role in this movie seemed kinder and now mature. She is valedictorian, and in general, they are supposed to be an example to the class. I feel that the directors were in a way helping Jessica be mature as her growth, while also helping the story's direction for Bella in regards to leaving friends behind. Bella, in a way, wants to make everyone happy and satisfied when she leaves her life, so in a small way, this growth from Jessica is helping us as viewers to leave her classmates behind like Bella is. Now, not everyone was necessarily moving on Leah. Leah is now a part of the pack, and because of this, she is now with Sam and Emily all the time. This increases the pain fest thinking amongst the pack and adds an extra layer to this growing group of wolves. This extra level of story dimension helps us understand the differences of love and brings a new word to the future story, imprinting. The action of imprinting for Sam and Emily happened soon after Sam started his transformation. His entire world was shifted and now revolves around Emily. Leah, being left behind and deemed his past love, leaves Leah upset and finds constant ways to irritate the pack. This helps us understand the pack and their actions, but also understanding the importance of imprinting. I will lightly touch on the wolf pack. This is the second movie we are interacting with them, but now we are fully watching them in action and in a fuller visual scale. When we originally interacted with the pack, it was in New Moon, but we didn't have long pauses like we do in Eclipse. We see the wolf pack together and spread out in the open field. But the detail and texture of the fur, in my personal opinion, was amazing. You literally see the lighter pieces of fur nearly translucent or shiny in the sun. This small attention to detail was spot on. The wolves were still larger than normal, but that was exactly what was depicted in the book. Also, each wolf had their own fur style or coloration, which I also fully enjoyed. Now, what about the Cullen family story growth? We get both Jasper and Rosalie screen time in Eclipse. Jasper's backstory helps with forming the preparation of fighting the approaching vampire army. This understanding helps us currently in the upcoming events for this movie, where Rosalie's backstory has us questioning Bella's current choice of wanting to no longer be human. This story and discussion helps set up the direction of Rosalie's thoughts and assistance in the future movies. Both of their stories will be further discussed in this video, so hold tight. Otherwise, in the soon-to-be Cullen family is Bella. The development of the love triangle literally hits its peak in this movie. Bella comes to the conclusion that she does not romantically love Jacob, she loves him as a brother, even if some kissing is involved. Yes, Bella heavily drags Jacob along because she knows she can always rely on him, but her whole heart and want for her future involves Edward. She finally admits to herself that of the love she knows and feels is with Edward, especially for Bella to agree about marriage since she continuously states she isn't about marriage. So for her to finally take that action is a big turning point for Bella as a development. Edward's development is him expressing himself for why he is trying to keep some things delayed in the relationship because he is a little old-fashioned in his actions of handling their relationship together. Aw, Edward, you are so adorable. Earlier, I discussed Jessica as being a valedictorian, but in reality, the book did not choose her. Eric was the original choice. I mean, at least he got to give his thoughts on the speech during the lunch table, even though Angela called him out and said, "This is why you're not valedictorian." Being that Jessica was a more pivotal character to the story, she was decided upon. The book had more interactions with Bella's classmates, especially Angela. Angela was always the chosen human friend that Bella expressed that she felt more comfortable with. After one of her disagreements with Jacob and hiding from Edward, she spent a late afternoon and evening at Angela's house, talking about graduation and dating. In fact, Angela was the only classmate's house that we physically visited and spent spent time in. This showed Bella's attachment to Angela, but yet she was never really utilized in the movies. I always felt this was rather disappointing. Obviously, I can't help but not mention how Charlie is always better in the book with his sarcasm and funny father humor. I know I mention him a lot in my videos because he's just that hilarious. Since we're mentioning Charlie, we have to mention his best friend Billy. Billy, during one of the campfires, tells the legends of the tribe. In fact, his opening lines were way better than the movie. He stated, "The Coyettes have been a small people from the beginning, and we are small people still, but we have never disappeared. This is because there has always been magic in our blood. It wasn't always the magic of shape-shifting. That came later. First, we were spirit warriors." Billy then proceeds to talk about the first spirit warrior, then Taha Aki, and then later his wives, but most importantly, the third wife. But one of my favorite lines of Billy describing the transformation of human to animal was well spoken. He stated, "All the stories tell us that it was no easy thing to be a spirit warrior. It was more frightening than exhilarating to be freed from one's body. This is why they only use their magic in times of need. The chief's solitary journeys to keep watch were a burden and a sacrifice. Being bodiless was disorienting, uncomfortable, horrifying." This added touch or details helps us sense what it feels like to transform into a wolf, and later, in the next book, when Jacob remains a wolf for a period of time, the struggle to turn back. How interesting. Soon, Bella will be a part of the Cullen family, so it is only necessary to discuss her future family members' backstories that were better done in the book. Movie did do it justice, but lacked the full personality I felt while reading. Jasper's story was told, but we did in most parts get to see his physical knowledge on the screen. I mean, he even had an accent. Still, a lot of details were missed, like this was not the first time an army was created. They were being created pre-Jasper in the South. The venom produced by a vampire if biting another vampire can leave a scar. Or even the fact of the details around the newborn, how incredibly volatile, wild, nearly impossible to control, and how incredibly powerful physically they are, was mentioned somewhat in the movie, but wasn't nearly as effective for what your mind envisioned their actions to be like. The other family member to mention is Rosalie. Again, Rosalie's story was told, but it was brought out in the movie later than sooner compared to the book. The book's placement for Rosalie's story was able to be pondered on rather than rushed for two family background stories being shoved at you at once. Also, Rosalie's telling made her still conceited in a way, but it gave Bella a deeper understanding for why Rosalie acted the way she did towards her. Rosalie opens up to Bella out of a near plead that she doesn't want to hurt her feelings, but wants her to understand Rosalie's beautiful and perfect past life. Rosalie thought her life was like a fairy tale, and she proceeded to tell it like it was one. For example, she felt the Great Depression as a middle class was nothing but a rumor. A mother's job was to keep the house spotless. Her beauty was a gift, so she was loved and adored. Rosalie even wanted a husband who would kiss her when he got home from work. Rosalie also outright stated that Royce was like a fairy tale prince longing for her and would be a social climb to make her a princess. Yet, Rosalie was still jealous of her friend who had a child. After being turned into a vampire, she felt the most beautiful thing ever graced the earth, and she had revenge with Royce, even though it was overly theatrical, but she knows she is vain and wanted everyone to want her. But most of all, her jealousy of Bella is stemmed around the action that a human can have a child. Don't get me wrong, Emmett is dearly loved by Rosalie, but she fell in love with Emmett for his innocence like a child in actions and appearances, which reminded her of a human past. A deep and touching story that helps you fully understand Rosalie as a person, and even feeling the action of her humbling herself enough to tell Bella of her past was extremely touching. Unfortunately, this was lacked upon in the movie in some points. Surprisingly, there are a few moments in the adaptation that are better than the book. This doesn't happen often, but for this movie, the credit is due. My first thought goes right to the Seattle Army creation. The manipulation that Victoria plays with Riley and the story she spins about the death of Laurent. Clearly no mention of James, her past lover. Could this be because Riley would have sensed her love and attraction to her past love? Either way, she formulates this plan around the Cullens killing Laurent, which wasn't true. It was the wolf pack. I mean, Riley does do his job right. He does get Bella's clothing and creates his army. Because we're talking about the army, we have to mention Jasper. Jasper's fighting skills are very clear and knowledgeable. He preps not only the Cullens, but the pack as well, days before the fight. He gives them their appropriate steps to follow when fighting. The newborns are a great deal stronger than you. Don't let their arms around you, and never go for the obvious kill. Jasper teaching the fighting steps was done really well for camera shots. Also, along the way, he points out mistakes like never turn your back on the enemy with a snarky smile, which makes you chuckle because we see another side of Jasper that we didn't really see before. We see Jasper in his natural element and not in fear of draining someone of their blood. It was a nice change of pace for once. But the best fight, which was practically pulled from the book, but felt 50 times better, was his practice fight with adorable Alice. I loved it so much. We might as well mention Bella's action of punching Jacob. Her acting could have been a little better about the hand injury. After a few minutes of the movie proceeding, she never reflects or acts like it still hurts. It was basically forgotten. This could have been portrayed better since the book had physically expressed that she was in more pain after she injured herself on purpose on the mountain to draw attention away from Edward. Well, I can't help but not touch on the love triangle discussions. The movie, in a lot of ways, condensed the important discussions to the bare meat and bone, leaving all those extra fatty words behind. At times, I am not gonna lie, this was preferred, but it was still very tolerable. Like when Jacob meets Bella at school, versus calling her after her trip to Florida. But Bella and Jake still have a disagreement where Jacob states, "Better you be really dead than one of them." Edward outright jokes about Jacob in the movie, saying, "Doesn't he own a shirt?" We do miss the scene in the book about riding motorcycles again, but this movie isn't about fearing the motorcycles. It's about fearing the newborn army. Edward's discussion of how he would have courted Bella is just as warm and fuzzy as the book. Edward even states, "I don't have a soul, but the risk to lose yours is the most selfish thing I have ever done." Then he continues, "You will always be my Bella, just less fragile." Okay, seriously guys, I could literally continue throughout this whole movie going back and forth between Edward and Jacob. Instead, let's mention our favorite lines in the comments below. Sometimes Jacob was overbearing and overtook the scene, but he was also trying to play dirty to get Bella. Like that time he kissed her not once, but twice. If I think of the best moment for Jacob though, for nearly winning Bella, was definitely when he was injured and healing. He allows himself to take a step of being basically calm and lets out his feelings in the most adult way that he has not done before without seeming young and, I guess, frustrating. This discussion between them was very touching, and I honestly, in this moment, in a way, wanted Jacob to have Bella. Jacob even admits, "At least I know I did everything I could. It wasn't easy making you admit you had feelings for me." Bella makes a comment. Jacob continues, "I'm exactly right for you, Bella. It would be as easy as breathing with me." Bella admits she does love him, and Jacob says, "You know how much I wish it was enough." Bella isn't sure if she should come back. Jacob states, "I need some time, but I'll always be waiting." Bella says, "Until my heart stops beating." Jacob's final expression was, "Maybe even then." Wow. Now this was very touching from Jacob. But he is her son, and his gravity is just as strong. So, good game, Jacob. Good game. I will mention that the movie did feel better in that their choice of only having one newborn helping Victoria on the mountain was a better choice than two in the book. The second participant in the book felt meaningless. Riley being the only helper was more effective. We already understood him for his character development, and he just felt right. This slight adjustment was a minor detail, but a detail to be pointed out nonetheless. At first, this section was difficult for me to ponder on what could have been done better, but I had to be honest with myself even though this is my favorite book and movie of the franchise. If I had to discuss a few things, this is what they are. Of all the classmate time that has been done throughout the first 3 books, I have a specific character I would have wanted more time with in general. That was Angela. I thoroughly enjoyed her as a kind character and was always genuinely there for Bella as a human friend. I could have seen that if there was anyone who could know Bella's secrets, it would have been discussed with Angela. In a way, I wish this was the case. The other character I could never have enough of is Charlie. His sarcasm is literally everything. But since we are talking about dads, I just have to mention Daddy Carlisle. His face was not shown enough in this story and movie, which is a total shame. In a brief mention, I would like to definitely see something more involving Jasper's friendship with Peter and Charlotte. I wish this was somehow expanded upon. I know there are some interviews on the internet expressing that Jasper would love to do a movie of his story, which involves not only Peter and Charlotte, but Alice too. Like, can we just make this happen? And on a slightly more serious discussion, I want to point out that some of the details being removed from a scene or two seem not right for the characters. Two individual moments come to mind. One is when Edward seemed very aggressive when Bella hurt her hand, and he angrily threatens Jacob. Seeing a curtain fall from Edward's normal demeanor felt almost out of character. The second scene is around Jacob. Jacob kept Bella warm while in the sleeping bag, and he kept thinking thoughts that were expressed to be, "Please keep to yourself." I understand that they are his thoughts, and Edward is simply mentioning it aloud, and it's technically a joke in both the book and the movie, but for some reason, seeing it on the big screen almost made it seem pervy. It just didn't seem right. Now, I can also be overthinking it, and granted, anyone can think inappropriate thoughts, but it just felt off for his character development. That is just a personal thought. This still feels saddening to come to the end of the third movie, but can we take a moment and give a shout out to this movie's soundtrack? It was, in my personal opinion, the best one. It hit every feeling possible from reminiscent to war preparation to sadness to feeling love. Mwah! It was delicious. Was this movie's soundtrack your favorite, or was it a different soundtrack? What do you think Charlie's reaction was like when Edward told him of the engagement? Would you be interested in a small video discussion about the second life of Bree Tanner? Mention all of it in the comments below if you do. Also, would you watch a movie based around Jasper's army days all the way to finding his Alice? Till my next Twilight video, stay nerdy and keep binging, you bloodsuckers.